Boy, that escalated quickly.
Superman has become one of the most miserable, exhausting arguments in modern pop culture. And James Gunn's Superman didn't settle the debate, it split it. How did we get from the unquestionable icon of the 20th century to a character whose very identity is now a cinematic tug of war between dueling visions, studio mandates, and a fandom so fractured, it makes the Star Wars sequel trilogy debates look like a polite disagreement?
Star Wars. No. The Force Awakens.
So in this video, we're diving back through Superman's messy, brilliant, often infuriating cinematic history. We're going film by film, the Reeve promise and the sequel sabotage, the nostalgic echo of Superman Returns, the neck-snapping reset of Man of Steel, and its deconstruction in Batman vs Superman and the Snyder Cut. And then we'll hit today's chaotic, overstuffed Gunn era. We'll track how each film mirrors its moment and how we went from "you'll believe a man can fly" to asking if he should exist at all. This is the rise, the fall, and the eternal exhausting question of Superman in cinema.
This is gonna be gorgeous.
Alright, let's get into it. Before we talk about the film itself, you have to understand the context. In the late 1970s, superheroes in Hollywood were a joke, a bad one. The campy 1960s Batman show had left such a bad taste in the industry's mouth that the idea of a serious, big-budget comic book film was laughable. Studios treated it like a punchline, not a genre. But in a post-Watergate, post-Vietnam America, an America drowning in cynicism and desperate for anything to believe in, the stage was perfectly set for a true hero to emerge. Enter the Salkinds, Alexander and his son, Ilya. These were old-school, ambitious producers who saw Superman not as a joke, but as American mythology, an untapped market.
I explained to him what it was. I said, Superman is a man who flies, who can do this, who is good.
They went to Warner Brothers, secured the rights after some long, hard negotiations, and made the insane decision to shoot 2 movies back-to-back. To give their crazy idea some legitimacy, they hired Mario Puzo, the guy who wrote The Godfather, to pen the script. And to top it off, they threw an astronomical amount of money at Marlon Brando to play Jor-El for about 12 minutes of screen time. We're talking $3.7 million plus a percentage of the box office. For that kind of money, Brando, for his part, suggested playing Jor-El as a green suitcase or a bagel with his voice. Yeah, a suitcase. This is the level of seriousness they were initially dealing with. But then the single most important decision of the entire production was made. They hired Richard Donner, and unlike the producers who primarily saw a massive commercial opportunity in American mythology, Donner saw the character first. He grew up on the comics, he got it. He looked at Puzo's 550-page camp-filled script and basically threw it out. His mantra, the word he drilled into every single person on his crew, was verisimilitude. It's a fancy word, but it just means making the unbelievable feel real. Donner wasn't making a comic book movie, he was making a myth, a cinematic epic. He understood the assignment.
A long time ago. I'm a very liberal human being in my philosophies and my politics, and I find myself in an odd sort of way.
And it starts with the casting, flat out legendary. Gene Hackman, a serious dramatic actor, was brought in as Lex Luthor. He was so stubborn about his image he refused to shave his mustache, forcing Donner to trick him into it. But the real challenge was finding the Man of Steel himself. The studio wanted a big name. Redford, Eastwood, Stallone. But casting director Lynn Stellmaster kept pushing for a complete unknown. A skinny 24-year-old Juilliard graduate named Christopher Reeve. After months of rejection, they finally gave him a screen test and he just nailed it. And what Reeve did with this role is to this day one of the greatest performances in blockbuster history. He underwent a brutal training regimen with David Prowse, the guy in the Darth Vader suit, and packed on over 40 pounds of muscle. But the physical transformation was the easy part. The genius was in the dual personality. His Clark Kent, inspired by Cary Grant in Bringing Up Baby, was a masterclass in physical comedy. The slumped shoulders, the high-pitched stammering voice, the constant fumbling with his glasses. Then as Superman, the voice dropped, the posture straightened, and he became the embodiment of quiet confidence and sincerity. He could switch between them in a single shot. It was so convincing, it made you believe that the glasses actually were a disguise, but they weren't. The performance was the disguise. And when you pair that with John Williams' score, it thunders. Fresh off Jaws and Star Wars, Williams delivered what might be his most perfect theme. That opening march doesn't just set the tone, it is the character, its hope, its power, its optimism. It's a promise that you're about to see something wonderful. It's the soul of the film. And that's what makes this movie work so damn well. It's the perfect trifecta. Donner's grounded vision, Reeve's transcendent performance, and Williams' soaring score. The film's tagline was, "You'll believe a man can fly," and that wasn't just about the special effects, which for 1978 were absolutely mind-blowing. They used a combination of wirework, blue screens, and a groundbreaking front projection system called Zoptic Process that made the flight feel dynamic and real. But the tagline was about more than that. The film sold you on the idea of Superman. It made you believe in his goodness. In a cynical world, this movie was a shot of pure, unadulterated sincerity. It wasn't ashamed to be hopeful. It wasn't afraid to be a fairy tale. Now, is this movie perfect? No. Look, I get it. From a modern perspective, the film is slow. We spend nearly an hour on Krypton and in Smallville before we see the suit. In an age of relentless, fast-paced action, that kind of deliberate storytelling feels almost alien, but it's necessary. It builds the myth, it grounds the character, and it makes his eventual arrival feel earned. Then there's Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman is endlessly charismatic, but his plan is a goofy, dated real estate scheme that belongs in a Bond movie. It works because the film's tone allows for it, but it's a far cry from the complex villains we expect today. But the biggest point of contention, the thing that people still argue about, is the ending. After Lois Lane dies, a grief-stricken Superman flies around the world so fast he reverses time. On a production level, this scene was actually stolen from the original ending of Superman 2 to give this film a more definitive climax. But on a story level, it's a massive problem. It's a Deus Ex Machina of the highest order. It establishes that Superman can literally fix any mistake, which completely lowers the stakes for any future conflict. It also directly contradicts two major rules set up earlier in the film: Jor-El's warning not to interfere with human history, and the heartbreaking lesson from Pa Kent's death that even with all his power, he can't save everyone. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card, and it's lazy screenwriting. There's no getting around that. But, and this is a big but, damn if it isn't emotionally effective. The raw, primal scream of anguish from Reeve sells the moment completely. You don't question the physics, you just feel his heartbreak. In the context of the film's earnest, almost fairy tale logic, it just about works. It's a flaw, a big one, but it's a flaw born from the film's massive heart. Ultimately, Superman, the movie, did more than just make us believe a man could fly. It created the blueprint for the modern superhero blockbuster. It proved that a comic book character could be treated with reverence, depth, and cinematic grandeur. It set a standard for sincerity and hope that for decades the genre would either strive to live up to, or, as we'll see, actively run away from. This film wasn't just great, it was foundational, but as the troubled production of its sequel would prove, that perfect formula was a fragile thing, and capturing that lightning in a bottle twice would be almost impossible.
Oh no, not again.
If Superman the movie was a miracle, its sequel was a spectacular production meltdown. We're talking about a level of behind-the-scenes drama and creative sabotage that would make the downfall of Game of Thrones look like a minor disagreement. The shoot didn't just go sideways, it turned into open warfare for the soul of the franchise, and the scars are all over the final film. You have to remember, the Salkinds' grand plan was to shoot two movies back to back, one epic story. But as the budget for the first film spiraled out of control, the daily arguments between Richard Donner and the producers became legendary. To try and keep things on track, they brought in another director, Richard Lester, officially as a mediator. Yeah, right. We all know what that means. It means the studio is getting ready to replace you. And that brings us to the first major casualty of this production war, the ending of the first movie, the iconic, controversial time reversal ending. That was never supposed to be in Superman the movie, that was the original ending for Superman 2. It was how Superman was going to defeat Zod and undo the destruction. But with production on the sequel halted and the producers terrified that a cliffhanger would kill their box office, they stole the climax from the second film and slapped it onto the first. But the real gut punch came after the first film was a massive success. You'd think they'd give Donner a blank check, right? But no, they sent him a freaking telegram, firing him. The loyalty to Donner was so strong that his writer, Tom Mankiewicz, and his editor walked out. Gene Hackman refused to return for reshoots in Lester's new material. Luthor's scenes rely on stand-ins and voice matching, so Hackman himself doesn't appear in the reshot footage. And Marlon Brando, in the middle of suing the Salkinds for a fortune, had every single one of his scenes completely cut from the movie. So Richard Lester, the guy who was supposed to be the mediator, stepped in to direct a film that was already 75% finished by someone else. And to get the sole directing credit, he was contractually obligated to shoot over half the movie. The result is a patchwork of incompatible visions stitched together mid-stride. And yet, despite all that chaos, some parts of this movie are genuinely great. Let's talk about what worked, because against all odds, a few things really did. First and foremost, General Zod. Terrence Stamp's performance is without a doubt one of the all-time great comic book villain portrayals. He doesn't just play Zod, he is Zod. The arrogance, the condescension, the absolute conviction in his own superiority, it's terrifying. Stamp walks around like he already owns the planet, and you believe him. The story goes that he, Sarah Douglas as the sadistic Ursa, and Jack O'Halloran as the brutish Non, kept to themselves on set, fostering this tight, intimidating unit. And it worked. They provided a physical and ideological threat that Superman had never faced. These weren't criminals, they were his equals, and their arrival on Earth immediately raises the stakes. Kneel before Zod isn't just a classic line, it's a mission statement, and it's delivered with a chilling perfection that 100 lesser villains have tried and failed to imitate. The other thing the movie gets right is its emotional core. Superman's choice. For the first time, we see the man behind the cape wrestling with a deeply human desire to just be normal, to have a life with Lois Lane. This isn't a god making a decision, it's a man in love. The central conflict of him giving up his powers for a chance at a normal life is compelling as hell. And the scene in the diner where a depowered Clark gets the crap beaten out of him by some random trucker is genuinely shocking. It's the first time we see him bleed, the first time we see him truly vulnerable. It makes him relatable in a way he never was before. It's a fantastic piece of character work that shines through regardless of who was behind the camera. The action, too, is a massive step up. The Battle of Metropolis is pure chaos. It's a citywide slugfest that feels bigger and more destructive than anything in the first film. But from here, the winds get buried under the misfires, and there are plenty. This is where the tonal whiplash gives you a concussion. Richard Lester wasn't interested in Donner's verisimilitude or epic myth-making, he was interested in gags. Goofy, out-of-place slapstick gags that constantly undercut the drama. We're talking about Superman throwing a giant expanding cellophane S symbol at a villain. An expanding plastic S? What the hell even is that? Or the villains using super breath to blow people around Metropolis like it's Looney Tunes cartoon. The first film made you believe a man could fly. This one makes you believe a man can get hit with a toupee thrown by a supervillain. It's jarring and stupid, and it feels like it belongs in a completely different movie. But the biggest sin, the moment that makes every fan groan, is the ending. If the time reversal was a lazy get out of jail free card, the kiss of forgetfulness is the screenwriting equivalent of just flipping the board game over because you're losing. After all the emotional weight of Lois learning his secret and Clark giving up his powers for her, they just wipe her memory with a kiss. It's a complete cop-out. It cheapens their entire journey, erases Lois's character development, and once again reinforces the idea that Superman can fix any emotional or logistical problem with a convenient, never before seen and never seen again superpower. It's an even more frustrating plot device than the time reversal because it's so personal and so lazy. Ultimately, Superman 2 feels like the compromised film that it is. It's a miracle it works at all. It's a testament to the strength of Reeve's performance and the foundation Donner laid that the film is as enjoyable as it is. But you can feel the seams. You can feel the two competing tones fighting for dominance in every other scene. Years later, we get the Richard Donner cut, which restored Brando's scenes and tried to re-establish that epic, serious tone. While it's arguably a better, more coherent film, it's also clunky and unfinished in its own ways, and its reuse of the time reversal ending just reopens a whole other can of worms. So, Superman 2 stands as a fascinating, frustrating, and brilliant mess. It gave us one of the best villains in the genre and a powerful conflict for our hero, but it also showed how easily that perfect formula from the first film could be broken by studio interference and a fractured vision. It was a massive success, but it was also a warning. The magic was already starting to fade.
That place was a graveyard.
After the cinematic train wreck that was the production of Superman 2, the franchise limped through two more sequels that were so bad we're not even going to talk about them. The Man of Steel was gone from the big screen for nearly 20 years, trapped in what can only be described as development hell. We're talking about a period where we almost got a Tim Burton directed Nicolas Cage starring Superman Lives, featuring a giant robot spider. Yeah, let that sink in. This IP was so lost in the woods, it's a miracle it ever found its way back. But after 11 years of these failed attempts, Warner Brothers finally found their guy. Enter Bryan Singer. Fresh off the massive success of the X-Men films, which basically revitalized the entire superhero genre. Singer wasn't just a hotshot director, he was a fan. A massive fan of Richard Donner's 1978 original. He was so committed that he actually jumped from directing X-Men 3, pissing off an entire studio and a legion of fans, all to make this movie. His vision wasn't just a reboot, it was a love letter, positioned as a sequel to Superman 2, while cherry-picking between the theatrical and Donner cuts. And of course ignoring 3 and 4. It's a bold move, and you know what? At the time, it felt like he understood the assignment. Singer's whole mantra was reverence. He wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel, he was trying to rebuild the most perfect wheel ever made. And to do that, you need the right parts, starting with the casting. Singer was dead set on finding an unknown who could channel the spirit of Christopher Reeve, and he found him in Brandon Routh. This guy not only looked the part, but he put in the work, gaining 20 pounds of muscle and meticulously studying Reeve's mannerisms. His Clark Kent was perfectly awkward, his Superman was perfectly sincere. It was uncanny. Then you get Kevin Spacey, one of the best actors of his generation at the time, to bring some real gravitas to Lex Luthor. And to top it all off, through a deal with his estate, Singer literally resurrected Marlon Brando, using unreleased footage from the first 2 films to have Jor-El in the movie. I mean, like, come on paper, this movie had no right to fail. And to be honest, a lot of it works. Against all odds for a good chunk of its runtime, Superman Returns is a worthy successor. The aesthetic, the production design, it all beautifully updates the look of Donner's world while maintaining that timeless Art Deco feel. And the music, the Williams theme soaring again, lands like a promise. John Ottman was both the composer and editor, and he didn't just reuse the old themes, he built on them, creating a score that was both a loving homage and a fantastic piece of work in its own right. Next up, the plane rescue sequence. Look, I don't care what you think about the rest of this movie, this scene is an all-timer. It is, without question, one of the single greatest Superman moments ever put to film. The tension is incredible, it's not just a simple catch the plane moment, it's a complex multi-stage problem-solving exercise. He has to stop it from spiraling, rip off a wing to stabilize it, slow its descent, and then gently place it in the middle of a baseball stadium, all while making sure no one gets hurt. It's a perfect showcase of his power, his intelligence, and his compassion. This scene alone proves that Singer had the ability to create something truly spectacular. It's a glimpse of the masterpiece this movie could have been. At this point, the bright spots get swallowed by the missteps though. This is where the love letter starts to feel less like a tribute and more like a ghost haunting a house it can no longer live in. The biggest problem, the one that hangs over the entire film, is the character of Superman himself. The film starts with him having been gone for 5 years. He just left. No goodbye to Lois, no word to anyone. He just pieced out to check on the ruins of Krypton. And when he comes back, he's not a symbol of hope. He's a mopey, melancholy stalker. And I'm not even kidding, he just floats outside Lois Lane's house, staring through her window like a superpowered peeping Tom. This isn't the man of tomorrow, this is the man of yesterday's sorrows. The film is so obsessed with the idea of his loneliness and heartbreak that it forgets to make him a hero. And that leads us to the biggest, dumbest, most unforgivable creative choice of the entire film, the deadbeat dad subplot. Yeah, you heard me. We find out that Lois has a son, Jason, and it's so blindingly obvious that he's Superman's kid that it feels less like a plot twist and more like a Jerry Springer episode. This decision creates a black hole of problems. First, it selectively discards the theatrical cut's memory-wiping kiss from Superman 2 and treats continuity Donner style. So depending on which cut you consider canon, Jason's existence plays like a continuity snarl rather than a clean sequel beat. The writing just doesn't care. Second, it turns Superman into a guy who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend for 5 years and then comes back to creep on her new family. It's a weird, uncomfortable, and frankly pathetic arc for a character who is supposed to be the ultimate moral compass. And the casting of Kate Bosworth as Lois, who was only 22 to play a mother in her late 30s with zero chemistry with Routh, just makes this whole thing feel even more bizarre and unconvincing. But the most glaring issue for a movie that was supposed to be a triumphant return is the staggering lack of action. I'm not joking when I say this, Superman does not throw a single punch in this entire 2.5-hour movie. Not one. We get the amazing plane scene and then nothing. The climax of the film isn't a fight, it's Superman lifting a big rock. A big kryptonite rock. Lex Luthor's master plan is once again a ridiculous real estate scheme that feels like a leftover from the 1970s. For a character who is a super genius, he seems to have only one idea, and it's a dumb one. This movie is so deathly afraid of physical conflict that it feels less like a superhero movie and more like a quiet, sad drama about a guy who can fly. Ultimately, Superman Returns is a fascinating failure. It's a film made with so much love and reverence for its source material that it suffocates it. It's a beautiful, well-crafted, and often moving film that completely misunderstands what makes its hero compelling. Singer was so focused on recreating the feeling of the Donner film that he forgot to give his own film a pulse. He delivered a love letter to the past, but it was a love letter to the longing, the melancholy, and the nostalgia, not to the heroism, the hope, or the joy. It was a ghost of a great film, and its financial disappointment proved that audiences didn't want that. They didn't want a ghost, they wanted a hero. And that disappointment would directly lead to a reboot that would swing the pendulum so far in the other direction, it would shatter the very foundations of the character.
To see you standing there having grown into an adult. If only Lara could have witnessed this.
After the nostalgic ghost of Superman Returns failed to scare up a box office hit, Warner Brothers were in panic. The message was clear. The world wasn't looking for a love letter to the past, it was looking for a manifesto for the future, and the future had a name: The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's gritty, realistic take on Batman hadn't just made $1 billion, it changed the game. Suddenly, realism and grounded were the buzzwords every studio executive was chanting. With the Marvel Cinematic Universe starting to look like an unstoppable juggernaut, DC needed to play catch-up, and they needed to do it fast. So they turned to the one man who had a proven track record, Nolan himself. The idea was simple: take the Nolan blueprint and apply it to Superman. David S. Goyer, Nolan's guy, pitched a new vision. It was a conscious, almost aggressive rejection of the Donner Reeve legacy. No more fairy tales, this would be a science fiction epic treating Superman's arrival as a first contact event. Nolan, serving as a producer and story co-writer, gave the project his blessing and his signature gravitas, and to bring this vision to life, they hired Zack Snyder. Now, Zack Snyder was an interesting choice. He was a visual genius, the guy who made 300 and Watchmen look like paintings come to life. But he also admitted he wasn't a Superman fan growing up, preferring the sex and violence of more adult comics. He was the perfect director to break the old mold, but he was also the perfect director to maybe, just maybe, break the character along with it. This was the pendulum swing from one extreme to the other. We were leaving the melancholy ghost of Bryan Singer behind and hurtling towards a full-blown, hyper-realistic and very, very loud reboot. For long stretches, Man of Steel is flat-out breathtaking filmmaking. Let's give credit where it's due here, because this movie gets a lot of things right. First off, Krypton. Amazing. This wasn't Donner's crystalline paradise, this was a Geiger-esque alien world, a society on the brink of collapse. Snyder's vision of a high-tech biological design with giant dragonflies and organic-looking ships was a bold and brilliant move. It immediately told you this wasn't your grandfather's Superman. The world building was dense and fascinating, with the idea of a society that artificially breeds its citizens for predetermined roles. This gave us a Jor-El played with commanding presence by Russell Crowe, who wasn't just a scientist in a robe. He was a warrior, a rebel, a man who taught himself kung fu and fought for his son's freedom to choose his own destiny. It was a sci-fi epic in its own right, and it set a powerful, serious tone from the very first frame. Then you have Henry Cavill. Look, say what you will about the script, but physically, this guy is Superman. After months of grueling training and a 5,000 calorie diet, he didn't just look the part, he looked like he was carved from granite. When he puts on the redesigned suit, a sleek, chainmail-inspired uniform rooted in Kryptonian culture, minus the red trunks, you believe it. He was the perfect physical vessel for this new, more stoic Man of Steel. And when you pair that physical presence with Hans Zimmer's score, it's a whole new world. Zimmer had the impossible task of following John Williams, and he wisely didn't even try. He created something new. That thunderous, percussive score, especially the "what are you going to do when you're not saving the world" theme, is pure, unadulterated power and hope. It's the sound of a god discovering his own strength. Which brings us to the first flight. This is hands down one of the best moments in the entire film, and maybe one of the best Superman scenes ever. It's not a public spectacle, it's a private, intensely personal moment of release and self-acceptance. The build-up is perfect. Clark discovering his heritage, Jor-El's guidance, the hesitant first leap, and then the explosion of joy as he rockets into the sky, the smile on his face, the Zimmer score soaring behind him. It's not about saving the world, it's about accepting himself. For that one moment, the film captures the pure, unadulterated wonder of Superman. And the action, it's what everyone felt was missing from Superman Returns. The battle in Smallville is an absolute showstopper. It's brutal, visceral, and terrifyingly fast. Feora moves like a predator, and the destruction feels real and has weight. We finally get to see what a fight between Kryptonians would actually look like, and it is glorious chaos. On top of that, you have Michael Shannon's General Zod, who is a fantastic villain. He isn't just evil for the sake of it. He's a tragic figure, a soldier bred for a single purpose, to protect Krypton. With Krypton gone, his very existence is a contradiction. His motivation to terraform Earth is monstrous, but you understand it. He's a zealot fighting for the ghosts of his people, which makes him a far more compelling and formidable foe than a real estate-obsessed Lex Luthor. But for every great idea in Man of Steel, there's a script decision so baffling, so fundamentally misguided that it derails the entire enterprise. And this is where the movie falls apart. This is where we get to the dumb script decisions. First up, the death of Jonathan Kent. This is without a doubt one of the most intellectually bankrupt scenes in modern blockbuster history. In the classic stories, Pa Kent's death from a heart attack is a powerful, poignant lesson for Clark. Even with all his power, there are some things he can't fight. He isn't God, it's a lesson in humility. In Man of Steel, he dies in a tornado because he refuses to let Clark save him, all to protect his secret. Like, what? Clark could have zipped over at super speed, grabbed him, and been back before anyone even blinked. The scene's logic is fundamentally broken, but worse than that is the lesson it teaches. This Jonathan Kent doesn't tell Clark to be a force of good. He tells him, maybe, he should have let a bus full of kids die. He instills a lesson of fear and hiding, not hope and responsibility. It warps the very foundation of the character into something cynical and fearful, all for a moment of cheap, unearned drama. Then there's the destruction of Metropolis, and oh boy, this isn't just an action sequence, it's what the internet rightfully dubbed disaster porn. The final battle is an orgy of falling skyscrapers and city-leveling carnage that would make Roland Emmerich blush. And in the middle of it all, Superman seems completely oblivious to the thousands of innocent people being vaporized around him. He throws Zod through buildings, he makes no concerted effort to take the fight to an unpopulated area. We get isolated moments of him saving Lois or a soldier, but we never see the sweeping public heroism that defines the character. It's a spectacular fight, but it's a soulless one. It sets up the central conflict for Batman vs Superman, sure, but in doing so, it portrayed its hero as a reckless, destructive force, a criticism the franchise would never manage to shake. Then comes the neck snap, the single moment that broke the fandom in half. After a citywide demolition derby, Superman is forced into a corner. Zod is about to fry a family with his heat vision, leaving Superman with no choice but to kill him. This was a deliberate, calculated decision by Snyder and Goya, one that Nolan himself was reportedly against. Their justification was this act would be so traumatic, so defining, that it would forge Superman's no-kill rule forever. It was meant to be his ultimate trial by fire. The problem is, it makes no sense in context. After watching him carelessly contribute to the deaths of thousands for the last 20 minutes, his sudden tearful concern for this one family feels wildly inconsistent. The film wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants the cool, edgy moment of Superman killing, but it also wants us to feel the profound tragedy of it. You can't do both. The moment feels forced, a desperate attempt to be dark and mature that betrays over 70 years of character history for a cheap shock. It's a moment of deconstruction that the film hasn't earned, and it plants a seed of darkness in the character that would fully bloom in the next film. Man of Steel is equal parts mesmerizing and maddening, visually stunning yet at odds with itself. It succeeded in its mission to create a new Superman for a new century. It gave him a powerful new origin, a spectacular visual language, and a sense of raw power we'd never seen before. But in its pursuit of realism and grit, it sacrificed some of the character's core components. His unwavering compassion, his role as a protector of the innocent, and his fundamental optimism. It broke the mold, but in doing so, it created a hero the world wasn't sure it wanted. And as we're about to see, the next film would make him pay for it in the most brutal way imaginable.
He is angry, and he's hunting.
If Man of Steel planted the seeds of a darker, more conflicted Superman, then Batman vs. Superman is the toxic, irradiated wasteland that grew from them. It plays less like a sequel and more like an indictment. The last film ended by asking what this new hero would become after being forced to make an impossible choice. This film's answer: he becomes a sullen, joyless, and frankly pathetic figure who is a complete stranger in his own movie. This is the film that was supposed to explore the consequences of his actions, but instead, it reduces him to set dressing, feared, resented, and shuffled around to service a far more compelling Batman plot. This wasn't just a misstep, this was character assassination on a level that is frankly unforgivable. Opening with the Battle of Metropolis from Bruce Wayne's POV is a sly stroke of genius for a Batman movie. It's an incredible sequence that perfectly establishes his rage and motivation, seeing the destruction from the ground, the disaster porn of the last film, recontextualized as a 9/11 level event. Immediately, it makes you understand why he would hate this godlike being. But in doing so, the film makes its first critical error. It frames Superman as the villain of his own story from the very first frame. We are told through news clips and weird dream sequences that the world worships him like a Jesus figure, but what we are shown is a world that fears him. A significant chunk of the plot is dedicated to Lex Luthor framing Superman for a murder in the desert. A plotline the audience knows is fake from the start, making us watch characters chase a mystery that doesn't exist for us. The film constantly tells you one thing about Superman's public perception, but shows you the complete opposite. But the real crime of this movie is Superman himself, or rather, the charisma vacuum where Superman should be. The character is so passive and so reactive that it's genuinely infuriating to watch. He's a puppet, and Lex Luthor is pulling all the strings. His heroic acts are few and far between, and when they do happen, they're just weird. He saves a woman from a burning factory in Mexico, and then just leaves without putting out the fire. He hovers ominously over flood victims before deciding to help, and during the Senate bombing, he just stands there looking confused as the room burns around him. He's not a hero, he's a bystander to his own life. Henry Cavill, who looks like he was born to play this role, is given absolutely nothing to do but scowl. There's no distinction between Clark Kent and Superman. They're both just the same miserable, joyless guy. And it all stems from that backwards-ass lesson from his parents. This is a Superman whose mother literally tells him, "You don't owe this world a thing." What the hell kind of foundation is that for the world's greatest hero? And then we get to it, the moment that launched 1,000 memes, the moment that cemented this film in the annals of cinematic infamy, the Martha scene. Look, I don't think I need to explain why this is so dumb, but let's do it anyway. After a brutal, joyless slugfest, Batman is about to kill Superman. The entire ideological conflict of the film comes down to this moment, and how was it resolved? By Superman happening to mutter his mother's name, which also happens to be Batman's mother's name.
You're letting him kill Martha!
This isn't a profound realization of shared humanity, it's an emotional shortcut of the highest order. It's a plot contrivance so lazy, so insulting to the audience's intelligence that it derails the entire film. Batman, the world's greatest detective, couldn't figure out that this alien who saves people has a human mother and a life? The movie wants this to be a moment of deep emotional catharsis, but it hasn't earned it. It hasn't given us a reason to like this Superman, to care about him, or to believe in his goodness. So the big turning point of the movie doesn't feel like a character moment, it feels like the writers got stuck and just yelled Deus Ex Martha. After all that, the only logical place for the story to go is, of course, to kill him. And just like everything else in this movie, his death is completely and utterly unearned. The film wants us to feel the tragedy of his sacrifice, but why should we? The world he dies for doesn't seem to care. They saw him as the magnet for horrible things happening to my city. We, the audience, have been given no reason to form an emotional connection with this cold, distant figure. His sacrifice isn't a poignant end to a heroic arc, it's a plot point to get him off the board so the Justice League can be formed. It's a cynical, hollow, and emotionally bankrupt decision. Batman vs. Superman is a fundamentally broken film. It's a movie so obsessed with its own grim, murky aesthetic that it mistakes being miserable for being mature. It pays lip service to big ideas about power and responsibility, but is far more interested in watching its two iconic heroes punch each other through buildings. It's a 2.5-hour preamble to another movie, and in the process, it takes the most hopeful and optimistic hero in all of fiction and turns him into a symbol of failure and despair. This wasn't a deconstruction of a hero, it was a demolition, and it set the stage for a follow-up that would somehow manage to misunderstand the character even more profoundly.
You have eyes, so see.
And that brings us to the strangest chapter in this whole saga. A movie that shouldn't even exist. A 4-hour epic that was wild into being by a relentless and, let's be honest, sometimes toxic fan campaign. Released the Snyder Cut was a cultural phenomenon, and when it finally happened, it promised to be the ultimate vindication of Zack Snyder's vision. A chance to undo the studio-mandated 2017 cut that buckled under the notes. The question is, while it may have fixed the film's pacing and tone, did it do anything to fix Superman? Or did it just give us a longer, more stylish version of the same fundamental problem? This movie needed Superman back. His death left a vacuum of power and a planet ripe for the taking, with Steppenwolf and his army of bug creatures literally drawn to the world's fear. The newly formed Justice League, bless their hearts, knows they're completely outmatched. Bruce Wayne, the same guy who spent the last movie trying to murder Superman, is now the one saying, "We're not strong enough to defeat Steppenwolf, and without Superman, the world is going to be destroyed." Like, the irony is so thick you could cut it with a batarang. So the plan is to resurrect him. The whole resurrection scene plays like a weird sacrilegious lab experiment. We get Flash and Cyborg literally digging up his grave, which is a hell of a way to honor a fallen hero. The plan is to use the all-powerful Mother Box, which Cyborg helpfully confirms by running the numbers, whatever the hell that means. And it works. But the Superman who comes back isn't a savior. He's a confused amnesiac rage monster. He proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of the entire Justice League with complete ease, treating them like bugs under a boot. This one scene completely invalidates any sense of a balanced team. They are nothing without him, and of course, the only thing that stops him from burning Batman's face off is Lois Lane, the emotional failsafe that Bruce conveniently brought along. In the chaos, the team completely forgets about the world-ending artifact they just used, and Steppenwolf just teleports in and grabs it. The team's reaction to losing this thing is so muted, it's like they just found out their favorite coffee shop ran out of cake or something. And then he's back. He flies to the Kryptonian ship and he emerges in the cool black suit. And look, I get it. It's a nod to the comics, it's fan service, and visually it's a striking image. But that's all it is, a costume change. Because the character underneath is still the same empty vessel we left at the end of the last movie. And that's the fundamental problem with Superman in this film. He doesn't read as a person so much as an on-call solution. A switch the story flips when it needs a win. He's absent for 3/4 of a 4-hour movie, and when he finally shows up for the final battle, he renders the entire Justice League redundant. No hyperbole, he sweeps in and does everything the other characters can do, but better. He saves more people than the Flash. He beats the shit out of Steppenwolf more effectively than Wonder Woman and Aquaman combined. He trivializes the Mother Box climax by doing the heavy lifting, pinning Steppenwolf, taking hits, and powering Cyborg through the separation. So the win reads as Superman's, not the team's. Batman is barely relevant in the final fight, which only underlines how redundant the team becomes once Superman arrives. The League's entire purpose in this movie wasn't to save the world, it was to bring back the guy who could. This completely undermines the very concept of the team. Why do we need a Justice League if Superman can handle it all himself? It's a problem that plagues team-up movies, but it's never been more blatant than it is here. And because he's so ridiculously overpowered, the final victory feels completely hollow. Steppenwolf, who was already a weak, uninspired villain, is just effortlessly swatted aside. We feel absolutely nothing because the team didn't earn the win. Superman did. The Snyder Cut doesn't fix the core issues of Batman vs Superman, it just sidesteps them. It doesn't give us a Superman who has learned from his past, who has grown, who has found a new sense of hope or purpose. He doesn't come back wiser or more compassionate, he just comes back stronger. The cold, distant, joyless figure from the previous film is still here, he's just wearing a different color and is now powerful enough to solve any problem without breaking a sweat. His resurrection isn't a journey of rediscovery, it's a power-up. Ultimately, Zack Snyder's Justice League is the grand operatic finale to this particular vision of Superman. And it's a vision that fundamentally sees him as an alien god, a force of nature, an ultimate weapon. This wasn't the triumphant return of a beloved hero. It was the final definitive statement that this universe was more interested in Superman as a weapon than a person. And while it gave a legion of fans the film they fought for, it also proved to be the end of the road. The interest in this darker, more deconstructed take had run its course. It was the end of an era, a grand, bleak, and ultimately failed experiment. The god had been broken, put back together, and made all-powerful, but somewhere along the way, the man was completely lost.
It makes me Superman, for one thing.
Yes, we know.
So after years of a miserable, deconstructed god, the pendulum swung back. Hard. James Gunn's Superman was a declaration of war on the Snyder era, and the moment it hit theaters, the fandom absolutely fractured. The battle lines were drawn instantly. On one side, you have the believers. For them, this was a triumphant return to form, the second coming of Christopher Reeve in a brightly colored, optimistic package. They hailed it as a pure, fun, comic book distillation of the character, a perfect restart for the DCEU with a fantastic cast. This was the hero they'd been waiting for. But on the other side of the battlefield, you have the detractors who saw this as a complete disaster, a bloated, tonally confused mess that stuffs 10 pounds of side characters into a 5-pound Superman bag. They saw a hero who was goofy, whiny, and weak, a movie that felt more like Guardians of the Galaxy with capes than a Superman film, all held together by a god-awful script. It was a betrayal. So the film's arrival didn't settle the argument, it just poured gasoline on it, leaving one big question. What the hell did Gunn actually deliver? When Gunn's movie clicks, it really clicks. The big win is Superman himself. David Corenswet doesn't play a god learning to smile. He plays a decent man whose default setting is kindness. You can see the interior life, doubt, fear, resolve, flicker across his face before he chooses the right thing. That's the character. That's truth and justice without the sermon. And as for Lois, Rachel Brosnahan shows up with a reporter's knife between her teeth. The interview isn't softball questions for a demigod. It's a live fire test that forces Clark to steady his voice and earn respect. Their second, quieter conversation gives the film its heartbeat. And when they take to the sky, it feels earned instead of obligatory IP smooching. Lex Luthor works because he's modern, a smiling disruptor whose spreadsheets have body counts. Nicolas Hoult plays him like a tech messiah who's read too much Ayn Rand and thinks OSHA is a personal attack. When Superman walks into that tower and says, "I'm going to be good whether you like it or not," the mask slips. The vibe is daytime, not dungeon. The color, blues, sun on steel. A lived-in DCU that doesn't stop the movie to explain itself. Hawkgirl, Guy Gardner, and Mr. Terrific just exist and bring attitude. Through the cumulative justice sampler later starts to crowd Clark's through line. Skipping the origin drops us into year 3 confidence and gets to the good stuff fast. The heroism lands because it's big and small. Sure, there's a Diamond Field dust-up and poster-worthy saves, but the beats that sing are smaller. Calming a panicked bystander with a breathing cue, rescuing something as tiny as a squirrel, taking the smear campaign heat without lashing out. Crypto helps too, pure, joyful glue that humanizes the god. Topple that with a rousing score, a suit that looks built for flight, and Kents who shaped the man before the myth, and you've got the clearest case for why this character still matters. All of which should clear space for a character-first story, but the film then spends that time budget on universe seeding that crowds out Clark's through line. This movie looks like a buffet, and like every buffet, there's good food on the table, but when you pile everything onto one plate, it all turns into lukewarm mush. We jump immediately to year 3 Clark and a world that's already mid-argument about him. Fine, pace is a choice, but then you stack a Baravia Jean-Per Flashpoint, an already weaponized public discourse, and Lex running a 24/7 smear factory powered by Pocket Universe monkey typists. That's 3 different movies before we've even settled on what Superman's problem is this week. Add a kaiju distraction, introducing a whole Justice gang, Hawkgirl, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho, who immediately starts bickering about best practices, and the headline inside a Superman film becomes, "Please enjoy your Justice League sampler." It's cool for a trailer, but death by 1,000 subplots for a character piece. Then the script does the true origin grenade. Jor-El's plan A wasn't hope. It was hegemony, while also spinning up Ultraman, Teshmaker's whistleblower selfies, an expanded daily planet ensemble that boards the third act ship whether they've had arcs or not, and a late Supergirl handoff teeing up future DCEU homework. Top it with multiple stingers and you can practically hear the studio whisper, "Don't worry, if this story doesn't land, the next one might." That's the content first, story later creep in real time. What gets crushed under the pile is Superman. Not his iconography, the suit pops, the score soars, but his through line. Scenes that should be about his agency keep getting hijacked by world building. So our guy alternates between getting rocked in set piece pinballs and waiting for teammates to tag in. Relationships that need oxygen, Clark, Lois, Clark, Lex, Clark, the city, are constantly quick cut to make room for the next lore brick, which leaves character beats feeling like recap cards. You can't sell a fixed point if the camera never stops panning, and yes, cameos and deep cut roll calls can be great when they serve characters, they're just not a substitute for it. The irony is that the film proves the pieces work. Corrin Sweat's decency reads, Brosnahan's Lois sharpens every scene, Holt's Lex hums, but the movie keeps reaching for more heroes, more timelines, more teasers, until the thing that should be singular turns into noise. That's why half the audience walked out exhilarated and the other half exhausted. Beacon versus Blender. And when the blender is this loud, even Superman can't cut through the mix, no matter how bright the S is. If the structure is a blender, here's what it does to the center. The man in the suit starts to taste like filler. Gunn's film wants the cake and eat it too version of Superman. Beacon of decency and chew toy for a plot machine. When it slows down, you can see the guy. Corrin Sweat's quiet warmth, a gentleness that reads as a choice, not sermon. But the movie keeps stress testing that grace with contradictions until the North Star stops spinning. As for Clark, the dual identity is played as a quick toggle. Hair, glasses, posture, boom. So the performance sells two people, but the script rarely lets Clark exist. We enter in year 3, mid-controversy, with Baravia Janpur discourse already on fire. He's simultaneously a beloved mascot and a liability. Then the film sidelines him, a pocket universe prison, kryptonite drag, Ultraman soaking up oxygen. Agency becomes fetch quests. Hopeful, yes. Proactive, only between interruptions. As for Lois, she rules. She's sharp, relentless, not a damsel for a single frame. The problem is proportionality. When she's flying the rescue mission, decoding Teshmaker's selfies, and steering the ship, Superman's arc starts reading like supporting character energy in his own movie. Great for Lois, but not great for focus. As for Lex, Holt's tech messiah is inspired. Slick smile, spreadsheets with body counts, but his plan stacks gimmicks. AI smear factories, crypto napping, and the Jor-El meant conquest reveal into one overclocked dump. It's compelling mythology crammed into a single breath. So Clark processes identity shock while also dodging 3 other subplots. The Justice League sampler, it's a fun hang with thin arcs. Mr. Terrific pops, Hawkgirl gets one hard choice, Guy Gardner is a flavorful jerk, add Supergirl, and even with Crypto's delightful beats, the growing ensemble starts to dilute the experiment. Superman, the symbol, thrives in community. Superman, the protagonist, doesn't. The net effect of all of this is a hero characterized as steadfast yet depicted as reactive. A story about personal responsibility that keeps outsourcing solutions. Deconstruction only works if you also rebuild. Here, the reconstruction lives in scattered grace notes, small saves, kindness, a sky and delight. The rest is blender. When the movie remembers to breathe, he is Superman. When it doesn't, he's content. Why does this movie exist? Because it had to. Gunn and Safran were hired to build a coherent DCU, and Superman is the proof of concept pilot. It's the Iron Man 2008 playbook. Launch the tone, sell the ethos, show the pipes of a shared world, hence Year 3 Clark, no cradle to cape origin, and a city already arguing about him. Its aesthetics are the counter thesis to Snyder. Daylight palettes, sincerity as default, Silver Age weirdness treated as normal. Gunn leans hard on comics he loves. Morrison optimism, birthright empathy, then wraps it in his house blend, humor, found family warmth, a dog that sells plushies and softens a god. The movie aims to be both emotionally legible, an invitation that says, yes, kids, Superman is for you. Adults, you'll find the bruises too. And why the crowding? Universe economics. If the DCU is a lived-in place, you seed it on day one. Hawks in the sky, Lanterns sniping from the sideline, Supergirl tee-up, Lex waging algorithmic culture war. The risk is obvious. Signal turns to noise, but the bet is clearer. Lead with hope. Normalize the fantastical and rebuild trust by letting the North Star smile again on purpose. Superman on film has always been a tug of war over one question: is he a beacon or a burden? Reeve's answer was simple: myth made human, decency is a superpower, the compass you steer by. You didn't interrogate him, you believed. Snyder flipped the lens: catastrophe has receipts, faith has consequences, and if a messiah bleeds, maybe he's the problem. That deconstruction hit hard, but it buried the man beneath the symbol and turned hope into homework. Gunn tries to square the circle, let the guy smile again, keep the daylight, and drop him into an already in progress DCU. At best, that's restoration. At worst, it's the blender we spoke about. Cameos, subplots, metagags, and a hero fighting for oxygen. Those swings expose the crisis. Authorship. Is Superman a moral constant who lifts us, or a contested figure we project our anxieties onto? When the films breathe, hands on a shoulder, a steadying word, you feel the answer. When they accelerate, 10 threads, 4 stingers, 3 discourse hurricanes, the signal turns to noise and the character gets outsourced to the plot. So who is Superman? Not a thesis or a content pipeline, a decent man who chooses to help. And the movies that remember are the ones that actually fly. So pick a lane. Either Superman is a beacon or your movie is a blender. If he's a beacon, build the story around his choices, not around the studio's content buffet. Give him agency, give him consequences, and let the camera love him without irony. The fix isn't complicated, it's disciplined. 3 rules. 1. Decency is the default. He doesn't discover goodness, he exercises it under pressure. 2. All with responsibility. Spectacle means nothing unless you show him thinking about collateral first. 3. Clark matters. If the disguise works in frame, posture, voice, tempo, you earn the man in Man of Steel and the romance, journalism, and civic life that keep him human. Do that and the villains sharpen, the politics calm down, and the discourse stops eating itself. Don't, and you'll keep rebooting a guy who never reboots himself. Superman isn't hard. Hollywood is. He's the compass you steer by when everything else is noise. Make a movie that believes that. Daylight, kindness, and a plan, and you'll finally answer the question. Who is Superman? He's the one who chooses to help. Your film should too. Stop apologizing for sincerity. It's the superpower modern blockbusters keep forgetting to use on purpose.